Hi, I'm Rachel Tessman from stampyourartout.com. On May 22nd, I shared some fun alternate projects that I created with the contents of this May 2024 The Best There Is paper pumpkin kit from Stampin' Up! And today I'd like to share with you a few more ideas, 3 cards, and a scrapbook page. I'll be using a few extra supplies as I share. You can find these items listed below and linked to my online store. You can also find links for learning more about paper pumpkin kits, for starting your subscription, for my blog posts linked to today's projects, and for my May 22nd post sharing the other projects that I made. If you don't have this May kit or you've used it all up by now, I hope that you'll be able to adapt what you see here to products that you do have. Let's get started. The first card is fairly simple, and it involves using a punch or some dies in the shape of a circle this size or similar. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take and punch into the side of this layer. I'm just pressing the punch all the way in, and I can feel it flatten out in the back there. And then I'm checking to make sure that the 2 sides are about even, and I'm going to go ahead and punch. Don't throw away this piece. It's really cool. Use it for something else. I'm sure you'll come up with a fun card idea. And my card base is white on my finished card. So how I got that is I basically folded this kit card in half in the opposite direction. Do you see that? You can see both layers here. So this is going to become the front of my card. I'm also using a stamp from the kit. So these are the 3 pieces that I have from the kit. I'm bringing in some extra ribbon. This is our navy and gold glittered ribbon. Glittered ribbon? Yes, glittered ribbon. And so I'm going to take a small piece of that, and I'm going to wrap it from the front to the back. And I'm just going to go ahead and tape it down. So I'm using some tear and tape adhesive. If you are a kit subscriber, you probably have a roll of this sitting around. It's one of those adhesives that Stampin' Up! Likes to throw into our kits every once in a while. Not a full roll like that, but mini rolls. Okay, now when we lay this over the top, we just want to make sure that it's about centered. And we're going to tuck one end to the back and tuck the other end to the back. And we may have to put another piece of tear and tape over the top of that to secure it. Okay, so we've taped down that piece there, and now we're going to do the same thing with the other side. The last step for the ribbon is to take a little small piece of it, about 4 inches, and we're just going to do an overhand knot and cinch it. Trim the ends, and then add that here. And you can use glue dots, you can use the tear and tape. There are glue dots that come in the kit. I'm actually going to use the tear and tape adhesive, and I'm going to try to peel off the backing here. And then I'm going to roll it into kind of a little glue dot of its own. It's nice and strong that way. Put a little bit on this side. I think on my original card I did use the glue dots that came in the kit, but this is just fun that you can take and manipulate. If you can get the backing off, you can manipulate the tear and tape adhesive to do what you want also. And I put one on either side so that it would hold down that ribbon on the ends too. And that's how you get that fun look. Now let's take and hover this, not really hover, but lay it down on top of the card base so that it's centered. We'll grab our Misty Moonlight ink. The ink that comes in the kit is Misty Moonlight. I'm just using a larger version of the ink pad. We'll ink it up. We'll keep this nice and flat and still and centered. And we're just going to stamp in the middle of that circle. And because we have clear stamps, we can take and eyeball where it's going. We'll flip this over. We'll add dimensionals to the back side. There are dimensionals that come in the kit. You'll want to add a couple dimensionals close to the edge of your circle. And then you'll also want to add some to the far corners of your card layer, I should say. So we'll have ones in the corners. And then again, we want to have some going around the circle. So we'll just add a couple more. We'll add one maybe right here to keep it lifted up and away. Here. And I'm not going to add one right underneath this bulky area here. That's where the knot of my ribbon is. So instead I'm going to go on the two sides here. And that's all there is to that card. Very fun, very pretty look. I love it. Super simple. We're going to use this same punch and we're going to do the second card. This next one uses a lot of outside extra product, just so you know. It uses a strip of garden green cardstock and coordinating garden green ink, a half a sheet of early espresso that I've already folded in half, so it's now a card base. And then I'm using 2 pieces, and you can get 5 from one sheet, 2 pieces that are 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. I'm also using early espresso ink and the layering leaves stamp set along with that punch that I had mentioned before, the 2 3/8 inch circle punch. Let's get started. From the kit, I am only using this piece, but it's a beautiful and awesome layer. We're going to cut into it. This time we're going to go in from the side, and we're not going to punch all the way in. Sorry, I almost did that. You want to just punch in about this far. Let me just check on my other card here. Yeah, I think I went about this far in, so that you have like a little C shape, a backward C shape. This is going to get mounted onto one of our white layers, which is why we have that size layer. But before we do that, we're going to stamp inside of it. So we're going to open up our early espresso ink. We're going to grab an image from the Layering Leaves stamp set. It's the Best Wishes image. Ink that up, stamp it down, making sure that the bottom of the words Best Wishes, the bottom of those words, are parallel to the bottom of the white layer. This piece is going to get added with dimensionals on here. So before we do that, though, we're going to do some punching of our leaves. So we're going to stamp some leaves, punch them out, add them, and then we'll be able to add that layer. So let's go ahead and stamp along here. This is a 1 1/4 inch high strip of cardstock. We're just stamping a couple of them. You can, stamping a couple. You can go ahead and stamp more if you want to. I'm only doing 2 because I'm going to show you how to make it look like more leaves. And I forgot, we need one more punch, the bow punch. So again, this does require a lot of extra product, but just kind of fun to see how far your images and your kit pieces can go in other directions. After we've punched out those leaves, this one is going to get added to our layer here, and it's going to go a little outside the edges. That's totally fine. Let's go ahead and add that with some multi-purpose liquid glue. Just going to put a little bit on the leaves here. We're going to omit this last leaf here, the bottom one. All right, and you can see I didn't put it all the way to the tips either, because the tips are going to kind of come off the ends. So we're going to add that like this. Oops, forgot I was putting it off the ends. There we go. And then we're going to trim. So you want your paper snips. And that's why we're not adding this yet, because we want to trim inside of that layer. So now you can see we have an extra leaf, right? This next one is going to get added in a similar way. We're going to add that one coming up and off like this, so that this end leaf is a little off the edge, and this is angled kind of, not straight. Like if we went this way, it would look really straight. We want to go a little bit like that. So we're going to leave the glue off the end of that one and just put glue onto these leaves here. And again, don't have it come straight off of that other one, angle it a bit. And then this last leaf, the extra one we had, can get added where it feels like it needs to be filled in, whether it's here or here. And then we'll start adding the dimensionals. Again, you want to go near that circle so that it stays lifted. And then in the four corners, attach all of our layers. You can see I've already stamped the inside layer, and there is our finished card. Very pretty. I love this. Let's move on to making this card now. This is quite a fun fold. It's involving some dies now. Instead of the circle punch, we're going to be using a circle die and the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. We're using quite a bit more kit pieces on this card. We'll be using the envelope to have some of that pretty paper. We'll be using this card base, this label, this piece here, and the blue leaves. We're going to cut this at 4 1/4 inches in this direction. Actually, I think I want to cut it this way. Get more of that character in there. 4 1/4 inches. We're going to save this because we're going to need a little bit of that. In fact, we'll just cut that right now. We're going to cut this at 4 1/4 inches, and then we'll cut it in half, and it can be approximate. So just position it in your trimmer and slice. And now you have 2 strips that are 4 1/4 inches long. This one you can set aside for some other project. And then I'm bringing in a piece from a card base from the kit. I didn't use a full card base on another project, so I just want a little strip of this. I'm going to cut 3/8 of an inch off, so I have a 3/8 by 4 1/4 inch strip. Now if you want to and you don't want to use up a card base just for that, you can just use early espresso cardstock, which is the coordinating color for this image on here. This is our card base. We're folding it in half, and now we're going to bring in our Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and we're going to die cut into this piece so that it's only die cutting a portion of the circle. So if you look at this finished card here, you can see what I did. This is the front, this is the back. I laid a die on here and only cranked it in halfway. So we're going to position our die onto our card. We put the crease in there so we could see where that halfway point is. But even on my card, if you look real close, it went a little further than halfway. That's okay. Let's grab our machine. We've got our base plate, our die adapter, our cutting mat number 1, and then our second cutting mat. We'll be using the dies called Stylish Shapes dies, and I'm going to use the second to the largest, and we're going to place that in between the cutting mats here so that it's halfway. Now how do we tell if it's halfway? Oh, let's back up for a minute. So here's a real quick tip. Okay, if you take and die cut from kind of a thinner piece of cardstock or paper, so I did it from some grid paper obviously, and then you fold it in half. Okay, we just folded it in half, and then we placed it within the lines of the cutting, back in the lines again, right? Lined it all up. Here, I did it this way. So I just placed it back within those lines, and then I took a Sharpie marker and I just marked it where those lines were, okay, or where the edge was, where the edge met up. And that's how I got my halfway point on the die. So now I'm going to lay that on here so that those little marks are lined up with the score line of my card. Then I'm going to grab some sticky notes, and I'm just going to make sure that this does not move on me. little post-it flags there. Again, I've got the marks, the halfway marks lined up with the score line. And I want the front of my card to go in first. And this is, I just like that pattern on the front. So I'm gonna feed it in this way. And again, let's just look at that finished card so you can see that we're doing this right. So here is the finished card. And we want to cut this portion. So we're going to feed that portion in first and crank it so that we feel like the die has been cut halfway. Okay? So let's lay this over the top. You want your card to be fairly straight as it goes in too, right? Not angled. And now we're going to crank it on in. There we go. I went a little too far, but that's okay. So it worked. And you're going to fold your card, and now you have your little circle part here. We're gonna reinforce it so it doesn't bend forward. Let's do a few more pieces for our card. So I'm opening up an envelope. I just cut off 1/16 of an inch on this side. I'm going to do the same thing on this side just to open up the envelope. We're going to cut just inside that trim line. It might help to do it so you can see where that score line. So we're going to cut just inside of it so that we have a nice smooth edge here. And then we're going to cut so that we have a 4 1/4 inch wide piece here. So you can see that if we just cut right near this little place where they overlap like that, we should be able to get our 4 1/4 inch layers. We're going to have to trim into that a little bit. There we go. So then we need a piece that is 2 1/8 inches, and we need a piece that is 1 1/4 inches. Okay, so one more thing that we want to prepare is this label piece here, and I'm just going to put it against something darker so you can see it better. We're going to grab 2 color inks. We're going to grab the Misty Moonlight, and we're going to bring back that Early Espresso. This is a fun technique. You don't have to do it on your card, but I just think that this is a fun thing to show you. So we're going to ink halfway. We're going to ink the Father's Day stamp halfway into the blue. So you can see it's got ink halfway up. We're going to flip it around, and we're going to ink halfway into the darker color. So you do the lighter color first, and then you do the darker color. There we go. And then we'll stamp it down right in the center of that label piece to get that two-toned effect. It's very subtle because the colors are very close to each other. Here on the finished card, you can probably see it a little bit better because the ink is dry. So I have the Misty Moonlight at the top and the Early Espresso at the bottom. Now let's go ahead and assemble the card. This circle is going to go right here to reinforce so that this doesn't fold on us anymore. When placing the circle in here, make sure that your trees are going the right direction. You want them to be parallel, the trunks to be parallel with the side edges of your card. You also want to see just a hint of white all the way around. We'll lay this piece on next, but it's going to encapsulate our branches. We're going to lay our branches down. Oops, let's put some adhesive on the back too. This is going to be the back. The colored side is the back. We're going to lay that down where we want it to go, and I'm thinking it looks pretty good right about there. And so this layer will go down on top of it approximately here. Let's go ahead and add some adhesive to the back of this little strip. This acts as the look of a ribbon, right? It has kind of that fun little accent look to it. And then we'll add this piece and we'll put that up with dimensionals. On the inside, it'd just be fun to have that same kind of imagery carried through, although this is totally fine if you want to leave the card blank white like that, but I thought it'd be fun to have some more color on there. And this is nice and light where you can still write on it. So there's the inside, and then we just need a couple embellishments. These opal rounds have sort of like a little iridescent-y glow to them. There is the finished card. It's so cool. I love it. So here we go. Let's work on the scrapbook page next. Yay! All right, for the scrapbook page, you can see we're going to be using some of that beautiful designer paper. This designer paper is called Country Woods, and it coordinates, in fact, the whole suite coordinates with this kit. So if you have this kit, you don't have that suite yet, or especially you don't have the paper yet, you might want to invest in it. We're going to use a little strip of that. We're going to be using some of the ribbon again. The opal rounds we'll be using again. Some of these pieces, which to me look like coral, and so I brought in a stamp set to kind of give a couple extra pieces of imagery to our page. So let's go ahead and put that together. So from the kit, we'll be using the stamp with the word best on it. We'll be using 1.5 of these pieces. This is a half of one of our card bases, the ink, the dimensionals. And then we'll be using a strip that is 4 inches. We're going to cut off a little bit of it. We're 4 inches from the Country Woods designer paper. We'll be using some 12 by 12 basic white, 8.5 by 11 early espresso, that large circle punch again, the 2 3/8 inch circle punch, some of that beautiful glittered ribbon, the opal rounds assortment, and Beauty of the Deep stamp set for the extra imagery. Let's start with our trimmer. And we're just going to cut off this gray portion here so that we see just blue at the top and the bottom. That will shorten our piece so it fits into our page a little bit better. We're also going to cut this piece down to just under 4 inches. And I believe, yes, by 5 3/8, but I will double check it. So 7 3/8 by 5 3/8. And then from our early espresso cardstock, we're going to cut at 3 1/4 inches here. Rotate it and cut it at 4 1/4. So we have 2 pieces that are 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. Then we're going to cut again at 3 1/4 inches. And we're going to cut those each to 3 1/2. So 2 pieces that are 3 1/2 by 3 1/4. And then we need a layer underneath this piece, which is going to be 5 1/2 inches by 4 inches. And the rest of these are scrap, whatever you'd like to use them for. We're going to punch into the middle, so we need to mark the middle. And actually we can just do that from the front because the paper is lighter on this side. Plus we're going to just punch it out. So one way to do that is to measure and then divide by half, or you can take and just equally lay that ruler down onto your piece so that you have the same amount on this side as this side from your 0 to 12 inch mark. And then you've got your 6 inch little spot there that you'll just mark with your pencil. And that will be where the center of your circle goes. So I'm eyeballing to make sure that that little dot there ends up in the center of my circle. This is done similar to that first card that we did. So we're going to lay this down onto our 12 by 12 basic white. And now we're going to take our stamp and we're going to mask. So we're going to use our tape and we're going to mask off the words your. So it just says the best there is, which could refer to anything, right? The best there is as far as a vacation goes, the best there is as far as like time at the beach one summer. So we'll ink that up, peel off this, make sure everything's nice and straight, and stamp it in the middle. So now I'm adding the ribbon the same way I did on that one card, and I've attached it with the tear and tape adhesive on the back side. This ribbon on the side here is a little unique though. We're going to see the ribbon without it being tucked around, right? So we need to get some adhesive there. Now we could either use a couple glue dots from the kit along there, or we could use the tear and tape. Just put a little dab in here. And then just fold that over and use your paper snips to do a little trimming. So we're going to trim in that direction, and then we'll come back and we'll trim in this direction. And the overlapping of the ribbon just looks so elegant, so beautiful. Now we'll flip it over and we'll continue to add dimensionals. I added some from the edges in each corner because they have like nice sharp corners when you cut them from the edges. And then we'll go ahead and we'll go around our circle. That's a lot of dimensionals. That's more than Rachel usually adds. Okay, and for this, you want to make sure that you're hovering straight over the top because you have a lot of dimensionals there and they're going to catch right when one of them sticks down. There we go. Now let's add our photo mat layers. This one's going to go in the middle and this side, but I think it's best if we add our smaller ones first. I don't put a lot of adhesive on the back sides of my photo mats because I want to sometimes be able to lift them up and shift them when I add photos later on, so that's why you don't see a lot back there. So now it's easy to add this layer in the middle because I've already got these closer to kind of closing in on that section, so I know exactly where that middle will be. Let's take and add our coral. So we're going to cut this one in half so that we have 3 halves. Then we're going to add them, and this one I want to add just straight down onto the basic white cardstock. So I'll take and grab my adhesive and run it on the back side like that. We'll hide it, oops. We'll hide it underneath. It wants to catch already. I wonder if I put my dimensionals too close. I may have done that. Hang on. Yes, I did. Okay, I peeled the dimensionals out from underneath this area. Now I'm going to lift up, and I can see a little bit of blue here. So I'm going to trim this down just a little bit more so it's skinnier. Tuck that underneath. And now I'm going to press down to help stick it in place. The next one, I want to angle like this. So I'm going to trim this little side here a bit. And this time I want to put adhesive on top of the blue. Let's do both of these together. So if this one's going to come over here, we want to trim that one down. And so let's put them right next to each other. Add the adhesive at the same time. Again, we're doing it on the blue instead of on the white side. And now, I think that one's going there. So we're going to shimmy it underneath. Angle it. Make sure it doesn't peek out too far here. Stick it down. So it gives a lot of depth in this area here. I have one further back and 2 that are popping out a bit more. The next step is to stamp our images from this set. We want the anchor. So we're going to stamp that down with some Misty Moonlight ink. So it's a little bit tilted down here. And before stamping the fish in the upper portion here, we're going to take some of this ribbon and we're going to measure it out just visually. So we need about, I would say about this much ribbon. And we're going to take and cut about the same distance away from the edge on both sides. So I've got about a little over 1/8 of an inch that I'm trimming on this side. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now the middle portion you can throw away, but it does have a lot of pretty glitter on it. And on my finished page that you can see here, I did add some of that glitter down here. It was actually to cover up some mistakes, but I added the glitter down there. So if you want to, you can shave off, just kind of run your fingernail along here and the little glitter pieces will come off. Not real easily, but they'll come off. Okay, so now we're going to take and add our rope coming down from the boat to the anchor. And I did that with rows of tear and tape. So I took a strip of this about the same length. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Okay, I peeled off the release paper and then I twisted it, kind of rolled it into a tube. And I got this little stick of stickiness, a stick of stickiness. And then I added that to the page, added my ribbon in there, trimmed off the excess. Let's make sure we're using our ribbon scissors. And I lifted and tucked. Straightened it out the best I could here. I think it's a little wonky there. There we go. And now I'm going to do the same thing with this piece. The hardest part is getting that release paper to go off. There we go. And then twisting it into a real thin stick of glue, like a long glue dot, right? And now we can add the little fish. So we have our anchor attached with the rope coming down from the boat. And now let's stamp our fish. There's also a fun bubble image in the set, so if you wanted to, you could stamp some bubbles coming up from the fish. Okay, the last thing is embellishments. And that's how quickly they can come together. Thank you for watching. It builds creativity to think outside the box. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can catch more paper pumpkin videos that I've shared using past kits and more that I'll share with future kits. Also be sure to visit my website at stampyourartout.com so that you can view close-up photos of all of these projects, see photos of other paper pumpkin kit ideas, and see many other great ideas that I share using Stampin' Up! Products. If you're watching my video on YouTube, look for the links in my description below. I hope that you enjoyed this video tutorial. Now I'd like you all to go and stamp your art out. Bye-bye.